Hi everyone! This video was inspired by 2 comments left on my last video about pick-me vegans, where I said this. Then of course there's the queen of pick-me vegans, Unnatural Vegan. The theme of her channel is literally, ooh, pick me, I'm not like those other vegans. I hate vegans and vegans hate me. I would insert a montage of clips here, but that would require me to sift through a bunch of her videos where she drones on and takes forever to make a point, and I really don't want to do that, so we're just gonna move on. One person responded, I actually don't think Unnatural Vegan is a pick-me vegan. She criticizes vegans who make insane health claims, as she should. She doesn't really criticize vegan activists, even when she receives a lot of backlash for it. Like when she defended that vegan teacher, and when she did criticize that vegan teacher, it was about her behavior outside of her activism, not the activism itself. I really disagree with her politics, but I don't think it's fair to call her a pick-me vegan, especially when you don't provide any evidence like you did with the other 3 in the video. And someone else said this, I was really following you until you arrived at Unnatural Vegan. You provided smart, analytical critique that wasn't personal up until then, and you made me think. When discussing Unnatural Vegan, you provided no footage while also expressing judgment of her speaking style and a presumed knowledge of her channel's intention. The rest of this video tells me that you're capable of doing more than this. I actually clicked on the video to hear commentary on Unnatural Vegan since she was in the thumbnail, because I like to understand multiple angles. Given other content I've seen from you, I was hopeful that this video would provide some useful points to consider. But now I wonder why you mentioned her at all if you weren't going to actually critique her. What was the point? What were your viewers supposed to learn from that segment of your video? And I thought, you know what? Fair enough. These 2 commenters reminded me that not everyone who watches my videos has the same impression of Unnatural Vegan that I do. One thing that frustrates me about Unnatural Vegan is that she doesn't always back up her claims, so I should probably back up my claims about her. After rewatching a significant portion of her back catalog to collect timestamps, I gotta say, I agree with her on quite a bit. Typically, I can disagree with someone and still respect them, but there's a line, and Swayze has crossed it. I think my lack of respect for her stems from her unwavering confidence and smug attitude when she's painfully wrong about something. And the way she positions herself as the rational voice of vegan YouTube, as she doubles down on irrational positions, slanders people, and perpetuates false narratives. I've already highlighted a fair amount of this on my channel in my response to her video, Anti-Capitalism is Anti-Vegan, and subsequent responses to her responses, as well as my response to her hot take that environmentalists should have more kids. But there have been many other times that Unnatural Vegan has said nonsensical, contradictory, or just plain inaccurate things, which I'll showcase in this video. Before we dive in, I want to make it clear that even though I don't like her, I wouldn't say she's not vegan. She doesn't consume animal products, and she's clearly motivated by ethics. I don't think she's an industry plant. I believe she has good intentions. And I can't deny that she has influenced people to go vegan, so kudos to that. But someone's positive contributions to a movement don't absolve their negative contributions. Maybe it was unfair to call her the queen of pick-me vegans, as she does break from pick-me vegan orthodoxy from time to time. For example, in her responses to Thought Slime and that vegan teacher. She doesn't seem particularly motivated by social approval, considering she'll double down on stances after receiving a lot of pushback. However, as I'll demonstrate, I think she's a special kind of pick-me vegan. She's not so much a people pleaser who doesn't want to stir the pot, but rather, she believes this pick-me approach is the most effective. She seeks to disarm carnists by differentiating herself from all those other vegans who are supposedly irrational, tribalistic, aggressive, and unpragmatic, so she can warm them up to veganism. I simply think she is wrong about this being the best approach, because in doing so, she's reinforcing inaccurate stereotypes and sending a conflicting message. We should seek to disarm people, but not by pandering to them. This first example is from a video posted in 2018 titled, Drake went veg, but can he do more? And should we tell him to?
So again, this piece from Jessica Scott Reed, she's agreeing with various animal rights groups like PETA that have said, hey, Drake, it's really cool that you're vegetarian now, maybe even vegan. He might be vegan, not sure. That's really cool, but you could do more by maybe ending your partnership with Canada Goose. And yeah, sure, like that would be a cool thing for him to do. That would be doing more. But is it good to say that? So a big focus on my channel is not just, I guess, being right, but it's also looking at thinking about the consequences of our rightness, so to say, thinking about the consequences of what we say. So you may be right in saying that, like, yeah, Drake, that's cool that you're a vegetarian or even vegan. That's awesome. But you can do more. Even if you say it in the nicest way possible, and this opinion piece is fine. It's not angry or anything like that. It's written just fine. And a lot of even the PETA stuff is written fine. But at the end of the day, no one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear that they can do more. And I think it always comes across, no matter how nice you say it, yeah, that's great, but you could do more. It's always got that tinge of like, I'm better than you. And I don't think there's anything you can really do about that.
The conclusion of her video was that it's not effective to demand that Drake end his partnership with Canada Goose. Her explanation for why it's ineffective is that nobody wants to hear that they could be doing better. With that logic, we should never demand that people do better because it doesn't work. It's not effective. Like, what? First of all, he's a celebrity. Even if this message doesn't reach Drake, using his name helps spread awareness about the cruelty of fur and down. But also, imagine a scenario like this in the context of human rights. Let's say there's a celebrity who's in the news for taking a stand against misogyny. Would it be bad for the feminist movement to use this opportunity to highlight sexist behavior that they haven't apologized for and explain why such behavior is harmful to women because no one wants to hear that they could do better? Also, Swayze criticizes vegans all the time. Fully Raw Christina needs to do better and stop promoting pseudoscience. Ellen Fisher needs to do better and vaccinate her children. If telling people to do better is so ineffective, then why make these call-out videos? Lastly, she's conflating veganism with a plant-based diet when she says he might be vegan, not sure. The fact that he has a partnership with Canada Goose should clear that up. I misspeak from time to time and use vegan in place of plant-based, but I do think it's important to communicate this distinction. I think Swayze cares a lot less about this distinction, which is probably why she didn't correct herself while editing. This next example is from a video titled, "Am I Anti-Vegan?" While I certainly wouldn't say she's anti-vegan, I do think she perpetuates a false narrative about vegans that ultimately harms the vegan movement.
Unfortunately, the online vegan community, especially on YouTube, is kind of shit and pretty toxic and seems to alienate a lot of people and really come down hard on people for making mistakes. And I'm not into that. It's not something I want to support. I'm not vegan for social reasons. I'm not vegan to like network with people. I don't really care if I have vegan friends or not, to be honest. Like I'm not vegan to be part of a vegan community. And I think there are much better communities full of much better, nicer people that I would rather align myself with. People in the effective altruist community, people in the reducetarian community that is made up of a lot of effective altruists. These are people who value effectiveness. They value effectiveness in speech and outreach. They are open to veganism, obviously, and they recognize just the basic idea that screaming at people and being really mean to people is probably not the best way to encourage them to change their lifestyle.
This implies that the vegan community is particularly hostile, that the majority of vegans are going around screaming at people and being really mean. What is her evidence of this? Freely? Vegan gains? Anonymous people on the internet? I agree that some vegans are too hostile. I can acknowledge that I'm too hostile at times. For example, my original response to Swayze could have been more effective had I chilled out a little. But this hostility has nothing to do with being vegan. This is human nature. Some people are assholes. Sometimes good people can be assholes. It's important to be specific. What constitutes screaming at people or being really mean? Because people often perceive gentle criticism as hate or harassment. And making sweeping statements like this validates their misconceptions. She expresses a similar sentiment in her video, "Vegan Gains Doesn't Understand Reducetarianism."
I can totally see people who are vegan but still identify as reducetarian. I've heard from, I would say 10 people, maybe more, over the years that I've been doing this, who have said that like they are vegan but they don't identify as vegan because they don't like vegans. because such a large, seemingly large number of vegans are like not the nicest people. I can totally see someone like that instead identifying as reducitarian.
It's important to distinguish between being nice and being kind. Nice is defined as being pleasant, agreeable, delightful, whereas kind is defined as having or showing compassion or benevolence. Occasionally, kindness is perceived as meanness because it doesn't come off as nice. An example that comes to mind is people who are genuinely concerned for Eugenia Cooney's well-being, who Eugenia brushes off as haters because she's delusional. Are some of the comments directed at Eugenia cruel? Of course. Are the majority of commenters being cruel? No. Was it mean of Jacqueline Glenn to 5150 her? Absolutely not. The same applies to vegans. Advocating for animal rights is the kind thing to do, yet animal rights advocates are painted as aggressive and mean. Vegans should be debunking this narrative, not reinforcing it. What is actually mean is supporting animal cruelty. Yet the message Swayze conveys is that vegans are mean and reducitarians are nice. As I brought up in my last video, one characteristic of pygmy vegans is that they advocate for reducitarianism. Unnatural Vegan is a strong proponent of this type of advocacy.
You know, look, most people won't go vegan or they can't go vegan, but pretty much everyone can like not eat meat for one day a week. It's just a really simple, easy to understand message and a really easy way to introduce people to plant-based eating. Yes, I advocate for reducing animal product consumption and not just going vegan because I believe that it's a more effective way to get people to do less harm because it's very clear that most people will not go vegan. Most people cannot even stay vegan.
Not with that attitude, damn. As I mentioned before, I work in sales. Having the attitude that no one is interested, nobody cares, or no one's gonna sign up certainly doesn't help you get sales. I recognize the flaws of the law of attraction, but any psychologist will tell you that there's an element of truth to it. So yeah, maybe don't say things like most people won't go vegan or most people can't even stay vegan to a large audience. Here's a clip from her response to the tofu goddess.
Now regarding her tweet saying that we can't conflate being vegan with caring about animals, animal advocacy, unnatural vegan. Vegans saying that if you care about animals and you want to be morally consistent, you have to be vegan isn't alienating people.
It's alienating all of the people who may not be ready to take such a big step. Going vegan is not the only thing they can do to move in that direction. Not changing their diets at all may be hypocritical, but any reduction is acting on those claimed values. It may not be as much as we would like, but it is something, and something is not nothing.
And here's a clip from her response to Blair White.
And honestly, another reason I stopped being vegan is, despite probably popular belief, I hate being the center of attention. And when you're the only vegan in a group of friends, or in your family, or in a group setting, or a business dinner, or anything, you are the center of attention because you have to say, I'm vegan, so we can't go to that restaurant, or I'm vegan, so, where's the vegan menu? It's like, it's just not my gig.
A lot of people have this problem. I've heard this from so many people. I've talked about it before. I have a whole video on it. And it's a shame because I don't think it has to be a problem. I don't think it has to be a big deal. It reminds me of a quote. It's one of my favorite things. It's from Vegan Outreach. I think it's actually from Jack Norris, but I could be wrong about that. I couldn't find the actual quote. But essentially, they said that when they're approached by people who are like, oh, I would love to go vegan. I would love to eat a vegan diet, but I just can't give up whatever it is, cheese, right? It's usually cheese. Then he's like, just respond, well, then don't give up cheese. Just go vegan except for cheese and eat cheese. And I think the same thing applies here. If you don't want to be the center of attention, which, come on, Blair, really? But whatever, I get it. She's probably very different in person with her friends. Sure. Whatever your reason is, you just feel uncomfortable, socializing and eating differently, or maybe picking certain restaurants, or like whatever it is, then don't be vegan when you go out to eat. Don't be vegan when you socialize. Just be vegan at home. That's still making such a big difference. it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
I understand that less harm is better than more harm, but advocating for anything short of animal liberation is doing a disservice to the animals. Compromising up front is a terrible negotiation strategy. It cheapens the message. Veganism is a social justice movement, and it needs to be treated as seriously as other social justice movements. How are we going to be taken seriously when our very own advocates aren't taking it seriously? Imagine a program aimed to lower campus rape stats, a noble cause. Now imagine them advocating for students to rape less rather than not rape. That would be psychotic, as Casey Taft, a clinical psychologist, points out in his book Motivational Methods for Vegan Advocacy. What is the difference between humans and non-human animals that justifies this difference in advocacy? Compromising on your ethics on certain days of the week or while out with friends is unacceptable. Swayze is telling Blair, and by extension other people, that this is an acceptable thing to do. The tofu goddess was right. This idea that advocating for veganism is alienating people is absurd. If anyone feels alienated, it means that they're simply not open to hearing the message yet. Research on persuasion shows that there is often a delayed response known as the sleeper effect. This effect has been observed in various situations, including the delayed acceptance of an ego-attacking message and the delayed impact of minority influence. A message is initially discounted, but it essentially goes to sleep in the back of our minds. It has the potential to be awakened and reconsidered when the person is confronted with information from another source that challenges whatever justification they use to discount it. In other words, the fact that a message stirs up feelings of anger and shame and doesn't prompt immediate behavior change doesn't mean that the message was not persuasive. When people assert that taking a hard stance for animal rights doesn't work, they're failing to account for the sleeper effect. Lastly, there's a difference between encouragement and over-encouragement. Yes, we should encourage people as they take steps towards veganism, but we shouldn't be overly fawning. I think Swayze crosses that line when she says that any reduction absolves you of hypocrisy, and in her response to Drake going veg, and in her response to Megan and Evan, aka Moon and Rock, which I'll play in a minute. Let's take a look at her responses to a couple Why I'm No Longer Vegan videos.
I made this video, again, the liver thing. If she hadn't have said that, I wouldn't have even responded because there's nothing really to say. She doesn't want to be vegan anymore. That's fine. You know, I'm not here to convince her, but because she made this like really big mistake that is influencing other people, I actually saw a comment. A lot of you commented on the video, but I actually saw a comment from someone who was worried about that claim and they were worried about taking supplements. That's really worrisome, right? And so I feel like it's really important for me and others to respond to something like that and say no. And it's not even a vegan issue at that point. Again, a lot of people should be taking B12. A lot of people should be taking vitamin D. And the thought that they're not because they're worried that it's going to hurt their liver, and then down the line they end up with osteoporosis or nerve damage or something from a vitamin D deficiency or B12 deficiency, that's terrible. But the ex-vegan stuff and struggling with veganism, you know, I want people to talk about that. I want people to be able to talk about what they're struggling with, and if they did quit veganism, why? Because otherwise, how are we going to know what people are struggling with? You know, it's not helpful to just pretend that anyone can go vegan and it's great and you thrive and that's it. The reality is a lot of people struggle with it for various reasons. And if we can figure out what that is, then we can help those people maybe start veganism again, or if they don't want to, fine, but at least we know and we can help other people who are trying to go vegan or who are interested in going vegan, or even ourselves. So as I always try to say at the beginning of these types of videos where I'm talking about, you know, people no longer being vegan, you know, I'm not here to tell them to stop eating animal products, to go back to being vegan. I don't think that's particularly useful. And look, I know that veganism can be really hard for a lot of people. There are a lot of life factors that make this diet difficult. It's a restrictive diet just by nature. Vegans are still in the minority. A lot of plant-based options are still expensive, sometimes several times, you know, the price of a non-plant-based like meat option. We don't have in vitro meat yet. And just eating less meat, less animal products can still make a really big difference, which seems to be what Evan and Megan are doing. They say that they are still eating plant-based.
Qualifying her statements with, she doesn't want to be vegan anymore, that's fine. If they don't want to be vegan anymore, that's fine. And I'm not here to tell them to stop eating animal products and go back to being vegan. I don't think that's useful. Is textbook pick-me-vegan nonsense. It's not fine. Animals are suffering by the trillions. It's interesting that in her response to the tofu goddess, she says that any reduction is a good thing. But here, Megan and Evan are reverting back to eating animal products, and they still get a thumbs up for making a really big difference. Because apparently, adding animal products to your diet still counts as reduction. To Blair, she says, if it weren't for the liver thing, I wouldn't even make this video because there's really nothing to say. She's so concerned about the people who might be influenced by Blair to not take a B12 supplement because they're afraid they'll damage their liver, which, fair. But she's not concerned about the animals who will suffer as a result of Blair's influence. There's really nothing to say about that. And she expresses the same sentiment in her response to Kalel.
And so she has turned to animal products, eggs, and meat as a way to fix her problems. And, you know, that's her choice. As I've said before, I don't see any reason to respond to something like that. You know, that's what she's going to do. It sounds like she's still eating like mostly plant-based. However, in this video, she has promoted a lot of pseudoscience, you know, because of her fear of being sick and of dying. She says she feels like she's dying. She has turned to pseudoscience and again is promoting this, you know, to her audience by making this video.
It reminds me of that meme that's like, I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at animal cruelty. Except it's, I can excuse animal cruelty, but I draw the line at promoting pseudoscience. She titled her response to Megan and Evan, Moon and Rock shouldn't be vegan, because she believes they are too dumb to do it properly. Same with Tim Sheaf. And she said this in her response to Earth Mama Medicine.
I stopped being vegan right before I got pregnant. I don't even know how pregnant women go through pregnancies vegan. I wouldn't recommend it at all.
Like, peace and love.
What works for you might not work for the person next to you.
But also, don't be vegan while you're pregnant. Okay, I've had 2 pregnancies vegan. It was fine. I mean, it was more than fine. I was regularly complimented on like not gaining too much weight. I was regularly complimented on just like what an easy patient I was because there was never anything wrong. Not saying that veganism is right for every pregnancy. I would caution anyone who is like not willing to take supplements, do not do it. You will kill your baby if you don't take B12. And certainly there are women who try and just have such severe food aversions and such a hard time getting enough calories and all of the fiber that can come along with a vegan diet that it can make it really, really hard. So as I've said in the past, I'm absolutely sympathetic when someone says they just could not stay vegan while pregnant. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that I'm a better person than she is. She's willing to say no one should be pregnant while vegan because she got cystic acne while she was vegan and then ate butter and it went away. I'm saying I have had successful vegan pregnancies, but maybe that won't be the same for you. Everyone's different. So am I the true like spiritual guru?
Harm to humans via potential nutritional deficiencies is so much more egregious to Unnatural Vegan than harm to animals. Both are terrible. Both can be avoided. That is the message we should convey. I would never say, oh, you don't want to take a B12 supplement because it's not natural? Well, in that case, you shouldn't be vegan. Because that is just as absurd as saying, oh, you don't want to take a B12 supplement while pregnant? Take a risk with your baby's health then. Animals don't deserve to have their autonomy stripped from them to support someone else's baby in the womb. Just take a freaking supplement. And regarding her joke about being the true spiritual guru, a true spiritual guru does not excuse animal cruelty. Another thing that irks me about Unnatural Vegan is that she makes it seem so much more difficult to be vegan than it is. This is incredibly counterproductive because it validates people's number one excuse. I could never be vegan. It's too difficult. Yes, there are social challenges, don't get me wrong. There are circumstances that make it more difficult for some people. And yes, we should acknowledge this. But these aren't excuses to harm animals. These obstacles can be overcome. I can reserve my judgment for people who are battling an eating disorder or depression, living in poverty, or have a bajillion food allergies. But I want to be clear in my messaging that it's still possible to work around these things. There are hundreds of thousands of people with mental health issues, economic struggles, and food restrictions who make it work. And there are victims involved in these seemingly innocuous choices. People often accuse vegans for not having compassion for people's situations. But animals deserve compassion as well. What about their situation? Being overly sympathetic to people's struggles with going or staying vegan to the point where you're excusing their behavior is a disservice to the animals. It's also a disservice to them because it's disempowering. Swayze acts like excluding animal products makes it so much harder to design a well-balanced diet, especially for children. The fear-mongering drives me nuts.
If you are going to be pregnant and vegan, if you are going to feed a child and be vegan, you need counseling. The vast majority of us need to go see an RD. We need help doing this because so many of us do not know what we're doing. And when you are inflicting that on a child, it's one thing to do it to yourself, which is awful enough, but to do it to another person is just terrible. But we cannot deny the fact that a large number of vegan babies are ending up malnourished or even dead because of inadequate vegan diets. This number of injured kids in such a small community, there are so few vegans in the world. How is this not concerning? Maybe it's because feeding kids vegan is hard unless you know a lot about nutrition. Maybe it's because a lot of the vegan educators online don't know dick about nutrition, but talk as though they do and encourage people to eat the way they do. Maybe it's just because lunatics are drawn to veganism. But even if it really is just that people who are mentally ill are drawn to veganism, I don't think the answer should just be, well, these parents are crazy, it has nothing to do with veganism. I think maybe we should be asking why. Why are these people so drawn to this diet? Why do they find it so appealing? Maybe we should take a look at the online vegan community. It is full of angry, misanthropic, borderline psychopathic vegans. It is full of borderline anorexic, if not obviously anorexic vegans. It is full of vegans offering horrible nutrition advice, feeding their children inappropriate diets that are just full of fruits and vegetable and rice, and being praised for it by other vegans. Now, truthfully, even without the online vegan community and the shithole that it is, I think we would still see these cases. Veganism is still very much on the fringe, and so it's going to attract people who are attracted to the fringe, people who like conspiracy theories, people who don't trust authority, people who feel like they want to know the truth, capital T, and they want to be in on some special knowledge that no one else knows. It's awful. I hate it, but I think we're going to keep seeing cases like this where parents just let their children deteriorate. They don't seek help for them when they're obviously suffering for months. Vegan kids and malnutrition. I believe this is an issue. I think we should talk about it. I don't think it should be ignored. A well-planned vegan diet is suitable for all ages, but kids can be picky and not all parents are good at planning nutrition or even like understanding nutrition, not very knowledgeable. There's also way too much anti-supplement shit within the vegan community, and that just makes me really nervous when these people start procreating, and this is why we keep seeing cases of malnourished vegan kids. I think it's important to talk about what happened, why it went wrong, because often there is a clear, they were fed a homemade formula or something, or there was no B12 supplementation. I don't think we should ignore it or act like it's just not a problem, and certainly not respond with like, omnivore kids get sick too.
It's so frustrating because omnivores get sick too is a valid response. Regardless of whether you're vegan, if you want to be healthy and raise healthy kids, you need to learn about nutrition and do some planning. She provides no evidence that vegans or vegan kids are at a higher risk of malnourishment, or that anti-supplement sentiment is more prevalent among vegans. She says it's a small community, so several cases a year should be alarming. There are 75 million vegans worldwide. A few cases a year is not cause for alarm, just as a few cases of vaccine injuries out of millions are not cause for alarm. I'm not opposed to the idea of parents getting nutrition counseling, but why vegan parents? Why not all parents? This is a problem with the alt-med community, not the vegan community. These communities overlap, of course, but veganism is about animal rights, whereas alt-med is about mistrust in medical authorities. These cases of children dying because they were fed grossly inadequate plant-based diets have nothing to do with animal rights and everything to do with mistrust in medical authorities. She's so focused on divorcing alt-med bullshit from veganism. Yet these videos with titles like, "Why are so many vegan kids malnourished?" are hurting her goal. They reinforce the idea that veganism is a diet. An inadequate diet is an inadequate diet, plant-based or not. Bad diet advice is rampant. This is not a vegan-specific problem. Interesting that she says this in her response to Blair White.
And it's not even a vegan issue at that point. Again, a lot of people should be taking B12. A lot of people should be taking vitamin D.
So adults suffering from nutrient deficiencies isn't a vegan issue, but children suffering from nutrient deficiencies is a vegan issue. And this all leads into my next issue with Unnatural Vegan. She acts like an authority on nutrition. She regularly reminds her viewers that she's not a dietitian, but this doesn't absolve her from overstepping from time to time. I agree with the bulk of her nutrition advice. Raw vegan diets are unnecessarily restrictive, and it's difficult to meet protein needs if you're not eating legumes. Sticking to a fruitarian diet while pregnant is idiotic and dangerous. Being anti-supplement is idiotic and dangerous. Describing mock meats as junk or transition foods is silly. It is not the scientific consensus that extremely low-fat, high-carb diets are ideal, especially not for women or children. And of course, you don't have to be vegan to be healthy. Where she loses me is judging other vegans' diets as inadequate and accusing them of endangering their children because they don't obsess over getting 100 grams of protein a day like she does. Here's an excerpt from her video, Ellen Fisher Teaches You How to Endanger Your Children, which was straight up slander.
As I said at the beginning of the video, Ellen and her family eat a mostly raw vegan diet. Now, a raw vegan diet for adults can be done healthfully if you eat lots of vegetables, if you eat lots of nuts, if you eat some protein powder. But the way that Ellen does it is not healthy. It is seriously lacking in nutrients beyond B12. I've watched several of her What I Ate Today videos, and she basically eats the same sort of kind of structure, I guess, every day. So she has fruit, she has a salad, and then she has some sort of carby cooked meal. It's very high in carbs, has some fat, very low protein. And she even eats this way while pregnant. So in this video, this is from last year, she eats some longans, I think is how you say it, for breakfast. I think they're like lychees, kind of. I've had lychees before. Anyway, she has that. She has a smoothie of bananas, papaya, passion fruit juice, sugarcane juice, hemp seeds, and some of the barley grass juice powder that I mentioned earlier. So very, very little protein so far. Then she has more fruit, a few bananas with some peanut butter, a salad of vegetables, and avocado with this like balsamic nut butter dressing. Again, no protein-rich foods in this salad. And finally, she has a vegetable curry over taro with potatoes and lettuce leaves. So again, no protein-rich source. This is not healthy, especially for someone who is pregnant. For one thing, it is so important for vegans to eat several servings of lysine-rich foods every day. Ellen is not doing that by relying on fruit and potatoes for calories. The only lysine-rich food that she gets the whole day is peanut butter. And unless she's eating like a cup of peanut butter, which I don't think she is, that's just not going to do it. Also, I highly doubt that she is getting enough calcium. For someone like Ellen who is not consuming calcium-fortified foods, whether it's non-dairy milk or tofu, they really need to be eating dark leafy greens, low oxalate dark leafy greens, preferably cooked. She clearly is not doing that. She eats some greens, mostly raw, and by the looks of it, just not very much. You know, she adds a little bit in a smoothie. She'll have like some romaine in a salad, and that's not really a dark leafy green. It looks like she'll have like some vegetables during her like cooked meal at the end of the day. I would also worry about iron and zinc, given that her diet is just so low in legumes and nuts. And again, I'm not cherry picking. I'm not just finding the one video that's like this. If you watch Ellen's videos, you know that this is how she normally eats. Here is another video. This is from a few months ago. She has fruit, a low protein fruit smoothie with a tiny bit of greens, a low protein vegetable salad with potatoes, and a low protein dinner of spring rolls with rice, broccoli, potatoes, and a vindaloo sauce. And her children eat virtually the same way, other than more fat from, looks like mostly avocado. A low protein fruit smoothie with a little bit of greens, some barley powder and hemp seeds, a low protein salad of vegetables and avocado, more fruit, potatoes and avocado, and a low protein pasta dish of brown rice pasta and a vegetable cashew tomato sauce. Again, lots of carbs, no lysine-rich foods, likely not enough calcium given the lack of calcium-fortified foods and dark leafy greens. There's just not enough of them. I would also really worry about iodine. Ellen seems to eat some seaweed, so, I don't know how regularly she's eating that. She might be getting enough, but the kids don't seem to have any dedicated source of iodine. That is very dangerous. This is in no way a healthy way for a kid to eat.
When I first watched this video, I was enraged. Watching it back, I'm still enraged. Ellen is certainly not immune to criticism. I've criticized Ellen myself. But her critique of Ellen's diet is wildly unfair and chock full of inconsistencies. It's true that Ellen used to be raw way back in the day, but at the time this video was posted, she had been eating cooked foods for quite some time. She says Ellen and her family eat a mostly raw vegan diet, and then goes on to admonish raw vegan diets, which I agree are overly restrictive. But mostly raw is not raw, and how are we defining mostly raw? Because Ellen has an entire cookbook filled with cooked recipes, which she released well before this video was posted. Swayze says, "I'm not cherry picking. If you watch Ellen's content, you know this is how she eats." First of all, I don't see a problem with what she eats in these videos, which I'll get into. But second, Swayze is cherry picking. At the time, I was watching Ellen's content religiously, like every single video, and she regularly included lysine-rich foods in her diet. Beans, chickpeas, lentils, tofu. I bought her cookbook. Here are a few recipes from it. Hearty lentil curry stew, pad thai with tempeh, Buddha bowl with hummus, tacos with pinto beans, nachos with quinoa meat and cashew cheese sauce, southwestern salad with tahini and pumpkin seeds. As Ellen pointed out in the comments, the dinner she showcased as a low-protein meal was filled with lentils. Ellen is clearly not relying on fruit and potatoes for calories. So let's go through her 2 What I Ate Today videos that Swayze chose to critique, and see if they're actually deficient in lysine, calcium, iron, zinc, or iodine. Day 1, she has longans, a smoothie with 3 bananas, 1 papaya, lilacoid juice, sugarcane juice, 2 teaspoons of hemp seeds, and 2 teaspoons barley grass juice powder. Mammy sapote, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Bananas with peanut butter. A salad with lettuce, kale, tomatoes, onion, purple cabbage kraut, avocado, dulse flakes, and a dressing made with 1 tablespoon macadamia butter, which she notes that you can sub peanut butter or almond butter. Coconut curry with veggies including broccoli, zucchini, mushrooms, and lentils, served over taro with sweet potatoes and lettuce leaves. Day 2, she has a papaya and dragon fruit, a smoothie with fresh orange juice, mango, pineapple, collard greens, and barley grass juice powder, a salad with dulse, hemp seeds, cucumber, tomato, avocado, and mixed greens, spring rolls with what looks like a peanut dipping sauce, and they very likely have tofu in them, as I've seen her make spring rolls with tofu before. Most tofu is calcium set. It's a reasonable assumption that she had at least a quarter block of calcium set tofu in her spring rolls. For dinner, she has rice, broccoli, potatoes, and a vindaloo sauce. And you can see if you pause the video, it has lentils in it. I plugged all of this into Chronometer, and I had to guess at some of the portion sizes. Based on my best guesses, she got well over 2,000 calories, but keep in mind, Ellen was eating large portions because she was pregnant. As you can clearly see, Ellen is eating a nutritionally adequate diet. Both days, she exceeds the RDA for protein, including lysine. Day 1, she's a little low on calcium, but day 2, she exceeds the RDA. And a quick note about tracking apps like Chronometer. You don't need to meet the RDA for every nutrient every single day. Some days you'll exceed the RDA, and other days you'll fall short. It's more useful to look at the week as a whole to get a good picture of what you might need to focus on. Considering Ellen makes dishes with tofu and cooked dark leafy greens regularly, I doubt she's deficient in calcium. Also, I looked up the nutrition facts for the macadamia nut milk I've seen her use, and 1 serving contains 45% of the RDA for calcium. Regarding iodine, which for some reason is not listed on Chronometer, Ellen puts dulse flakes on her salads nearly every day, and eats nori often. Of all the vegans on YouTube, Ellen is probably the least likely to be deficient in iodine.
And her children eat virtually the same way, other than more fat from, looks like mostly avocado. I would also really worry about iodine. Ellen seems to eat some seaweed, so, I don't know how regularly she's eating that. She might be getting enough, but the kids don't seem to have any dedicated source of iodine. That is very dangerous.
And her children eat virtually the same way.
I'm gonna add some dulse to it. Sea veggie dulse. And he loves it. Just gonna mix it super well into a little salad.
Likely not enough calcium given the lack of calcium fortified foods and dark leafy greens. There's just not enough of them.
And there you go. It's a nice simple way to get your children used to eating greens at a very young age. And the main tip to help ensure that your children love greens is to eat lots of greens yourselves, because we are the best example for our children.
Dark leafy greens, there's just not enough of them.
Swayze's obsession with protein, particularly lysine, is completely unfounded. Not every meal has to be high in protein. Just because you personally need a lot of protein to feel satiated doesn't mean that's the case for everyone. Balance is on the macro scale, not the micro scale. Analyzing 2 days of someone's diet is not going to give you the whole picture. Instead of apologizing when this was brought to her attention, she doubled down and released a follow-up video titled, "Responding to Ellen Fisher, It Gets Worse."
And so that's really it. Again, Ellen, I appreciate you commenting, but I stand by my video. I'm sorry. I apologize for the B12 thing, but other than that, I stand by my video, and I do think that what you're promoting, a lot of it is potentially endangering other kids. If other parents are following this advice, that's terrible.
You promote an unnecessarily restrictive diet.
I've been eating like a plant-based vegan diet for 15 years now, and the last 4 or 5 years or so, it's been pretty consistent with the same style of eating. A wide variety of whole plant foods. I do lots of green smoothies because I love to get the dark greens in. If you followed me for any amount of time, you probably know that. And I love salads. I love getting just all the goodness, right? Whole grains, beans, legumes, lots of fresh fruit. We love eating lots of fresh fruit. And I have breastfed all of my babies until they're at least 2 years old or around 2 years old.
If other parents are following this advice, that's terrible.
Of course, regular viewers of Ellen's content knew that Unnatural Vegan's videos were misrepresentative smear pieces, but afterwards, Ellen posted a pantry and fridge tour video to make it super clear what she feeds her family on a weekly basis. Her kitchen is stocked with beans, dark leafy greens, seaweed, peanut butter, lentils, and calcium-set tofu. Yes, Ellen eats more carbs and less protein than Swayze, but that doesn't mean her diet is nutritionally inadequate.
Tempeh in here that we sometimes add to noodle dishes.
I love tempeh.
You do love tempeh, huh?
I love mommy.
Yum.
Ellen acknowledges that there are many ways to eat as a vegan and to find what works for you. Swayze acknowledges this too, but she talks out of both sides of her mouth, as she is very critical of vegans who don't eat like her.
Look, I ate high carb. I ate non-raw high carb. Is that what you would call it? I don't know. With cooked foods, a normal low-fat high carb diet for years, and it was fine. I just personally prefer eating more protein and more fat. I find it a little bit more satisfying than low fat. I like that I can go a little bit longer between meals. That's really awesome. And it's just less restrictive. I can eat nuts and seeds and oils or not if I don't want to. I enjoy that. Basically, I don't look at macros. It's nice.
If that's your personal preference, why are you attacking Ellen for her personal preference? The way she's characterizing their diet here is unfair, because Ellen, Ryan, and Angie don't count their macros, nor do they avoid nuts and seeds. They don't cook with oil, but they don't avoid it completely. They eat out occasionally. Eating this way is their preference. They don't feel restricted. So why are you lambasting their diet as restrictive because it's not as high in protein as yours? Imagine if someone looked at your diet and was like, "You're not eating enough fruit. Why are you restricting fruit?" You'd be like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I eat fruit. I'm not restricting myself. I just don't care to eat more than a few servings of fruit a day." Finally, let's take a look at her video, Seaspiracy Kind of Sucks. I'll let my good friend Vegan Gaze take over from here.
Once upon a time, a harrowing prediction was made.
These industries
love shooting these documentaries down as propaganda pieces. But I'd really like to know what in that is propaganda. Maybe we'll see someone like Unnatural Vegan try to debunk this and be like, actually. And though such premonition carried all of that weight, what was more horrifying was that it came true. Actually. Please, tell us how this documentary is worthy of suckage.
It's really obnoxious to watch
Literally anything Unnatural Vegan uploads.
It's really obnoxious to watch someone pretend like they're learning all of these things for the first time when they've been vegan for longer.
The creative arc is dead to Unnatural Vegan. Never mind trying to appeal to a demographic who will be viewing the documentary who aren't vegan. Never mind trying to avoid immediately alienating them from something that is vital for them to be informed of. As long as the actual subject material is the case, what are we complaining about? Why is this the opening and clipped point of your critique?
They were vegan before even starting the documentary. I don't like it.
It's intriguing how easy it is to displease Unnatural Vegan when it comes to vegans making informative pieces. People love to applaud her as this unbiased, in-house cleaning vegan who says it as it is. But I think rather than fence-sitting, she plays to the popular side often. More people would absolutely love excuses for their behaviour, so her distaste to vegan propaganda is appealing to these people.
Given my not super positive views of what the health, I'm sure you guys are interested in what I have to say about Seaspiracy.
Oh, Swayze, how did you know? I can't wait.
And unsurprisingly, Tabrizi's next step is to follow the money. It is called Seaspiracy, after all. And lo and behold, Plastic Pollution Coalition is a project of Earth Island Institute, the dolphin-safe tuna dudes. The obvious implication being that the Plastic Pollution Coalition won't talk about the supposed connection between the fishing industry and plastic pollution because they are at least partially funded by the tuna industry. So yeah, there is a lot to talk about here. First, yes, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is mostly a result of the fishing industry. It's not really surprising. A lot of fishing is done in the Pacific, but the garbage patch does not represent all of the oceans on Earth. It doesn't represent all of the plastic pollution in the oceans. When we look at the ocean pollution globally, it's about 20%. 20% of the ocean plastic pollution comes from marine sources. So still a sizable portion, but quite a bit less than 50% or over 50%.
They mention the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Yes, they also mention when talking to the coalition specifically how this is the statistic within the patch. So what have they said that is wrong? We know that plastic straws have been a big focus, but fishing gear, which accounts for far more than plastic, isn't mentioned by the organizations that Ali calls out.
But according to the movie, discarded plastic straws really aren't the issue. It's actually the fishing industry that's the big issue. Lo and behold, Plastic Pollution Coalition is a project of Earth Island Institute, the dolphin-safe tuna dudes. The obvious implication being that the Plastic Pollution Coalition won't talk about the supposed connection between the fishing industry and plastic pollution because they are at least partially funded by the tuna industry. Tabrizi is absolutely right about that it's just a drop in the bucket. It's around 0.03% of all the plastic in the oceans, but eliminating fish doesn't fix things either.
It's interesting how she makes out like the introduction to this documentary was a problem, but if you listen to it, Ali Tabrizi is talking about how he stopped doing certain things, stopped consuming certain plastics in order to improve his impact on the sea. However, she seems to forget that part and frames it as if Seaspiracy is only telling you not to eat fish and that just be the end of it. When I didn't get that impression whatsoever. I got the impression that it was saying, hang on, there are big contributors to this problem and they're not being addressed. But they say that no, plastic straws aren't a problem. When they acknowledge it is a problem because they're talking about how bad waste is. Why she's framing it in this way, I'm unsure.
Seaspiracy talks about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and how, according to a recent study, the majority of the plastic in that patch actually comes from marine sources. It comes from fishing nets and other fishing gear. So then they do the whole, just like they did in What the Health, the whole, I've got to find the answers, I've got to go talk to people. So he goes to the Plastic Pollution Coalition. He talks to Jackie Nunez in a seemingly pretty damning interview. It looks pretty bad for them.
Yes, they interview the coalition and ask them why they don't mention this. And as you see, they look incredibly uncomfortable while they talk about this. And yes, the documentary shows that they are funded partially by the tuna industry. They are pointing this out, and Ali asks, I wonder why they're not willing to speak to me, I wonder why they're not talking about these things, and then you're saying, oh yeah, they're lying to you, oh that's what they says.
Plastic Pollution Coalition is lying to you about the fishing industry because they're funded by dolphin-safe tuna.
We can't fully know their intentions, but it is suspicious that they are not talking about a big contributor versus talking about one that is only 0.03% of the problem, i.e. plastic straws, while being funded by an industry that causes a lot of the plastic pollution. Tell me again why this documentary sucks?
And this is ultimately my big pet peeve with movies like this, with Seaspiracy and What the Health, is that they're vegan documentaries. The point of Seaspiracy is to convince people to stop eating fish, not for health, not for the environment, which is the whole focus of the film, but because the filmmakers believe it's wrong to eat fish, period. So they're starting from that position, and then they have to look for reasons why eating fish is bad for the environment, because that's what sells, right? No one's going to watch a movie about fish pain.
I wonder if Swayze would take this opinion with a true crime documentary. It's probably the case that most people who make true crime documentaries believe that murder is wrong and abhorrent. So obviously they're going to try and make true crime look as damning and evil and horrible as possible because they have this biased belief that it's wrong to kill others. Swayze, this is a really good example of carnist ideology rotting away at the rational parts of your brain. What have they said so far that is actually false? Because she goes on to say that this is propaganda. So where is the falsehood, Swayze?
In other words, the first hour and 20 minutes of the movie didn't matter. Sustainability doesn't matter. They don't really care about sustainability. Fish lives are what matter.
Can people tell me what the purpose is typically of someone caring about the environment? It's probably got something to do with the inhabitants within the environment, right? Because without an environment, you're not going to have inhabitants. So regardless, ethics is intertwined into the documentary regarding environmentalism. According to Swayze, it's a bad thing to have ethical intentions when you're doing something. So I guess modern medicine, when people have the intention of trying to save lives, oh, there's something dodgy going on there. Oh, when someone makes a documentary about the whales, they're caring about their lives. Oh, that's kind of weird because there's this intention of wanting to save these animals. Why is this dodgy to Swayze? Again, she says they've exaggerated, but what did they exaggerate? It's weird how she's framed this as if this documentary kind of sucks, but what isn't more sucky is that organizations dedicated to the problems aren't mentioning these things. Why is she framing it as if this is the problem? As if having the intention of caring about the lives of fish is a weird, suspicious thing. Yet, it's a bit less suspicious, you know, that these companies are making money off of telling people that certain things are safe when they can't ensure that, aren't mentioning problems that are, no matter what, a big problem. I just can't believe her. I really can't.
I know that's not as effective, at least in the short term. Again, people don't care about fish.
No, precisely. It's not as effective. And as you know, it's a play on conspiracy. They're following the way in which we aren't fed the full picture, even by those who are dedicated to this issue. This is a massive environmental and thus ethical catastrophe that from multiple angles can be attacked. What? it sucks because they went for a more effective angle. She even says, no, that's not as effective in the short term.
I know that's not as effective, at least in the, short term.
They make their intentions clear that it's wrong no matter what. But they know the general viewer isn't going to think that. They're trying to show the scope of the problem in a way that won't just have people switch off, hence opening it with animals people generally in the West grant moral value to. It went on Netflix, not vegan TV. Isn't Swayze one of the people who's like, well, you've got to appeal to the feelings of the non-vegans? Isn't that her entire thing? Yet here they are, bearing in mind their demographic. And it's just a bit too much for Swayze.
But still, documentaries like this just make me feel icky. They feel like propaganda because they are propaganda. Propaganda with a great moral message, but propaganda nonetheless.
Language is a wonderful, powerful tool. Propaganda means various things, but its connotations are that a powerful system is sharing misleading information in order to spread ideas. Tell me you don't hear propaganda and think that the subject of said accusation is something in some way that is false. What was said that is false, please? Or even misleading?
As you can see, Swayze is incredibly uncharitable to vegans compared to Carnice, because that's her whole shtick. I'm not like those other vegans. I'm rational and objective. I trust the science. She often thinks she's being objective, when in reality she's just regurgitating the mainstream narrative and pandering to Carnice. I swear she's like the female vegan version of Sam Harris. I'm on the left, but let me spend the majority of my time talking about how the left is full of dangerous lunatics. And let me remind you how rational and unbiased I am. All while being incredibly smug when he's flat out wrong about something, and having zero self-awareness. You may be wondering, why would you spend 72 hours of your life rewatching content from someone who annoys you this much? For the same reason Ina from Polite Conversations dedicated hours upon hours to her series Woking Up, exposing Sam Harris's pseudo-intellectual nonsense. I think it's important to expose the harmful rhetoric of people who portray themselves as champions of rationality and science. And the more thorough, the better. Thank you so much for watching. This was exhausting to make, so I hope you liked it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, stay tuned for next week. Alright, peace out.
Yo, how when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them say me no eat no fish, no meat now. How when me eat them, I wonder when me yam. When me tell them say that I'm a vegan man. How when me eat them, I wonder when me eat.